Oh my God. Breaking news. It's happening. It's really happening. We're getting reports of a giant asteroid hurtling towards Earth. Everyone run for your lives.
Wait, what's going on? Is this real?
Cats and dogs are living together. Mass hysteria. It's the end of the world as we know it.
Hold on. Let's not panic. I think you might be getting a little carried away.
Okay. You're right. Deep breaths.
That's good to hear. My heart can't take this kind of drama before my morning coffee.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Sip and Talk. You know what we do here? It's time for another deep dive.
I'm excited.
And today's topic is one that I think we all kind of look forward to at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Which is 2025 predictions.
I love it.
Everybody loves a good prediction. It's something that gets people talking, gets people thinking. And of course, as the year ends, everybody wants to know what's coming next year.
For sure.
Especially when you have some of these crazy predictions.
Oh, yeah.
Like a giant underwater explosion.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna dig into all of that today. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you, did you have a good holiday?
Oh, yeah. It was, the usual family craziness, lots of food.
Food coma.
Oh, yeah. Definitely had to loosen the belt a notch or two.
I think I put on like 5 pounds just from gingerbread alone.
Oh, wow.
It's a problem. But speaking of gingerbread houses, let's build a framework for our deep dive today.
Okay, let's do it.
So we're talking 2025 predictions, and we've got some really interesting sources, especially those about disasters and economic collapse.
Right.
We've got the classic Baba Vanga.
Of course.
Always a favorite, Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm.
We've even got some more contemporary figures like Ryuho Okawa.
Right.
Who, I gotta say, some of his predictions are pretty out there.
I know.
So our mission today is to sort of sift through all these predictions, figure out which ones are worth paying attention to, which ones are just maybe a little too outlandish.
Right.
And most importantly, why are we so fascinated by these predictions in the first place?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Like, what is it about the human brain that makes us want to know what's going to happen, even if it's something scary?
Well, it's interesting. There's actually some science behind that. There was a study in Nature Neuroscience that found that when we're faced with uncertainty, our brains light up in a specific area, the prefrontal cortex.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that part of the brain is all about decision-making, planning, trying to figure things out.
So it's like our brains are hardwired to want to know what's coming next.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to gain some sense of control in a world that often feels very unpredictable.
Right. It's like that feeling when you're about to go on a roller coaster and your stomach's doing flips. But you're also excited because you have no idea what's coming next.
Exactly. It's that anticipation, the thrill of the unknown.
And I think that ties into why we love predictions so much. It's like we want that little sneak peek into the future, even if it's a little scary.
And there's also the psychological aspect of it. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert has done some research on this, and he found that when we feel a lack of control, we're actually more likely to believe in things that try to explain the future.
So basically, the less control we feel, the more we cling to those predictions, even if they're totally out there.
Pretty much. It's like we're searching for something to hold on to some kind of explanation for why things are happening the way they are.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Think about times of crisis. Like during World War II, Nostradamus was super popular.
Right, exactly. During those times of uncertainty, people crave answers, even if they come from centuries-old prophecies.
And hey, let's be honest. Some of those apocalyptic predictions are just plain entertaining.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, oh no, the world's ending, pass the popcorn.
Right. Disaster movies, end-of-the-world novels. We're drawn to those stories, even if they scare us a little.
Totally. But before we get too carried away with the doomsday scenarios, let's inject a dose of reality here.
Okay, good point.
How accurate are these predictions anyway? I mean, are we really supposed to take them seriously?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, there's a lot to be skeptical about. There was a study in the Psychology Journal that found that expert predictions are essentially no better than random guesses.
Wow. So you're saying it's like flipping a coin to decide your future?
Pretty much. Which is kind of a sobering thought, right?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't trust a coin toss to pick my outfit in the morning.
Yeah.
Let alone tell me what's going to happen in 2025.
And think about the Y2K scare. Everyone thought computers would crash, planes would fall out of the sky, and the world as we knew it would end.
Oh, man. Y2K. My grandma stocked her basement with enough canned food to survive a zombie apocalypse.
And what happened?
A few minor glitches and a whole lot of leftover canned peaches.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how those overblown predictions can cause unnecessary panic and even lead to some pretty irrational behavior.
And it's not just about the social disruption either.
I remember that. My neighbors were like building a bunker in their backyard. It was wild.
Oh, wow. Yeah, people were really freaking out.
And for what? A few minor glitches?
Exactly. Think about the financial side of things. How some people might use those predictions to manipulate markets or push certain investments based on fear.
Absolutely. You see it all the time. Buy gold now before the economy collapses. It's fear-mongering at its finest.
Yeah, those safe haven gold ads always pop up when there's even a hint of trouble. All right. So now that we've laid the groundwork, let's dive into some specific examples from our sources and see what these predictions are all about.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we've got Baba Vanga, who's kind of a legend in the world of predictions.
Yeah, she's like the OG predictor.
Right. She supposedly predicted everything from 9/11 to Princess Diana's death. But then again, a lot of her predictions are so vague, they could apply to almost anything.
That's true. A lot of it is open to interpretation.
It's like those horoscopes that are so general they could fit anyone's life.
You will experience unexpected changes this week. Well, no kidding.
Exactly. Everyone loves to claim they predicted something after the fact.
Yeah.
But did they really see it coming? Or are we just looking for patterns where they don't exist?
It's easy to connect the dots when you already know the ending.
That's a great point. We have this tendency to seek meaning to find those connections, even if they're not really there.
Yeah. It's part of what makes us human, I guess, this desire to make sense of the world around us.
And sometimes that means finding those patterns in the chaos, even if they're just illusions.
Right. We're trying to impose order on a universe that might be inherently unpredictable.
Which brings us back to those 2025 predictions. We've got a wide range of them, from Baba Vanga's European war to Ryuho Okawa's massive underwater explosion.
It's quite a mix.
It's almost like a global game of what if? What if a war breaks out in Europe? What if there's a massive earthquake in the Pacific? It's enough to make your head spin.
I know. It's fascinating and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
And while those predictions might seem outlandish, they force us to think about those possibilities, to consider those what-if scenarios. It's a way to stretch our imaginations and maybe even prepare ourselves mentally, at least for whatever might come our way.
That's a good perspective. It's not about living in fear, but about being aware of potential challenges and thinking about how we might respond.
So we're not necessarily building bunkers in our backyards, but we are using those predictions as a starting point for some interesting conversations and thought experiments.
We're like, okay, what if this crazy thing actually happened? How would we react? How would the world change?
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time for a sip of something refreshing. What are you having today?
My morning coffee and bubbly.
Excellent choice. I've got my usual iced tea here, ready to quench my thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
So after this quick mental refresh, we'll be right back to delve deeper into those fascinating 2025 predictions. Stay tuned. I just want to give another shout out to Micky from Mickytolife. His channel is a treasure trove of inspiration, and he's a huge Sip&Talk fan.
Absolutely. Make sure to check him out and maybe even share your awesome podcast intro with him once you've created it. You know, it's funny how we've gone from like apocalyptic scenarios to this kind of like deeper dive into the psychology of predictions. And, you know, what's really fascinating to me is that it seems like this need for certainty, for this like roadmap of the future, it's such a human thing.
Totally. It's like we crave those answers, even if they're not, you know, accurate or even like logical sometimes.
Right. It's almost like we'd rather have a bad prediction than no prediction at all.
It's true. It's like we can't handle the not knowing.
And I think, you know, that speaks to a larger point about how we as humans deal with uncertainty when things feel out of control. Our minds naturally try to like find explanations, you know, look for patterns, anything to make sense of the chaos.
Makes sense. It's like our brains are screaming, give me something, anything to hold on to.
Exactly. And that's where I think predictions come in. They offer us this, you know, potential explanation, even if it's like wrapped up in some cryptic prophecy or a vague horoscope.
And let's be real, sometimes those predictions are just fun to think about.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like those end-of-the-world movies that are so over the top you can't help but laugh. You know what I mean?
Totally. There's something thrilling about like exploring those what-if scenarios, even if we know deep down they're probably not going to happen.
It's like a safe way to experience our fears and anxieties.
Exactly. Like we can confront the unknown in this like controlled environment where the stakes aren't actually real.
Right. It's all just a mental game.
Exactly. And that's what I think speaks to the entertainment value of predictions, you know? They give us this sense of escapism, this way to like explore all these crazy possibilities without actually having to face any real consequences.
Totally. It's like riding a roller coaster in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, you're safe, but your mind is still racing with all those what-ifs.
I love that analogy.
Right. So maybe predictions serve a similar purpose. Safely explore the unknown without actually risking anything.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it.
But, you know, it's important to remember that while predictions can be entertaining, they can also have, like, real-world consequences. You know,
Oh, for sure.
we've seen how they can lead to panic.
Yeah.
Predictions, even if they're well-intentioned, can create this unnecessary anxiety and lead people to behave in, like, really irrational ways.
It highlights the importance of critical thinking, you know, not just blindly accepting every prediction we hear.
Totally. We got to use our brains, people.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Exactly. Enjoy the roller coaster ride, but don't forget to buckle your seatbelt and keep your hands inside the car at all times.
Love that. A perfect analogy.
Right. Safety first when it comes to predictions.
Enjoying the speculation and staying grounded in reality.
Which brings us back to the specific 2025 predictions. We've got Baba Vanga's European War, Ryu Hokawa's massive undersea explosion, and a few other, like, knowing how unreliable predictions can be.
Well, I'm definitely approaching them with a healthy dose of skepticism, as I would with any prediction.
Yeah.
But I also find it fascinating to kind of like consider the possibilities. It's a way to stretch our imaginations and think about the potential challenges or opportunities that might be out there, you know?
I agree. Wouldn't it be cool if we could actually see into the future?
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Just imagine the possibilities.
The allure of knowing what lies ahead. It's definitely strong, but it also raises some pretty profound ethical and philosophical questions.
So, like, would we really be better off knowing our fate? Or is the mystery part of what makes life so compelling?
Exactly. Maybe that's a more empowering way to approach not just 2025, but like life in general.
For sure.
You know, we can't predict everything, but we can cultivate resilience, learn from the past, and make choices that align with our values.
Love that. So instead of fearing the future, we're choosing to be excited about the possibility.
Exactly. And that's a much more fun way to live, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's all about mindset, right?
Totally. We get to choose how we frame our reality.
And I choose optimism.
Me too. Cheers to that.
You know, it's amazing how these predictions can kind of shift our perspective.
Totally.
Like we start off talking about, you know, giant explosions and wars, and suddenly we're having these deep philosophical conversations about free will and the meaning of life.
It's like those predictions open up these whole new avenues of thought, you know? They make us question our assumptions about the world and about ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the benefits of exploring these predictions. Even if they don't come true, they can still, like, spark our imaginations and challenge us to think differently.
I agree.
Exactly. It's like, hey, if the world might end in a giant underwater explosion, maybe I should finally quit my job and travel the world. You know, carpe diem and all that jazz.
Right. Life is too short to be stuck in a rut, especially if those 2025 predictions have any truth to them.
Totally. So maybe instead of fearing the future, we should embrace the possibilities, you know? Live in the present moment and make the most of every opportunity.
I think that's a great takeaway from all of this. Instead of getting bogged down in the what-ifs, let's focus on what we can control. So cheers to 2025 and to all the adventures that lie ahead.
Cheers to that. And cheers to all our listeners out there. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of predictions.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise. So until next time, friends, stay curious, stay adventurous, and keep on sipping.